Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs Daily War Room Update. We are on day 100 of the war with the Gazan terrorists. It started with the massacre, taking of 240 hostages by the terrorists. Over 139 of those hostages remain still in the hands of the terrorists. And obviously today is a special day marking the fact that they have been now in captivity, held. Some of them have already been executed. Some of them are being starved. Some of them are undergoing terrible things that should not be described, as has been exposed by the people who were lucky enough to be released. We're talking about beatings, sexual harassment, really things that we don't need to get further into because we'll let your imagination really decide what's going on there. As the update on all of the different fronts, the IDF forces are obviously continuing fighting in Gaza, really expanding the scope of operations in southern Gaza, with last night a dramatic decision with the Israeli cabinet notifying the Egyptians that Israel intended to take the Philadelphia corridor. That is the area that is adjacent to the Egyptian border with the Gaza Strip, and really to be able to control what's going on there, prevent the smuggling in of more weapons from Egypt, prevent the terrorists from escaping and taking the hostages with them. And that's really going to be a main focus and a main drive. In Lebanon today, we saw the continuation of that war of attrition. 2 Israeli fatalities today. A son and his mother, 40-year-old and a 70-year-old, murdered by the Hezbollah terrorists on the northern border, and the IDF forces responding to those attacks. In the south, we've seen the continuation of the Houthis interfering with the freedom of navigation and the entrance to Bab el-Manda, with the US and UK forces carrying out airstrikes against the Houthis. In Judea and Samaria, we saw also the continuation of the anti-terror operations. Today, another shooting attack in the southern area of Judea, by Gush Etzion, which saw another really dangerous escalation with terrorists again shooting a drive-by attack. It followed an attempted infiltration last night, or a successful infiltration last night into the Adura, on Friday night, into the Adura settlement, where the terrorists were luckily killed before they could carry out their plans. And so really that brings us down to our special guest today. What we're going to do today is really focus in a little bit on the Israeli Arab population, Israeli Christian population, the Lebanese Christian population, how those all tie together. Dan, if you'd like to introduce Shadi, I think that would be most appropriate.
Absolutely. I mean, what we've been saying for years is that Israel is a Jewish majority character but very much a multicultural country with wonderful representation of communities from across the Middle East, representing Aramean Christian, Muslims, and Jewish, of course, communities. And in a way, Israel is, in so many ways that's gone underemphasized, is a microcosm of the entire Middle East and the fabric of the entire Middle East. And there's nobody better to help shed perspective and context, which is the key word, context. Our friend Dr. Harold Rode always talks about context, and that's how I met Shadi Khalloul, is through Harold Rode, who's a dear friend and colleague of Shadi's, and has been telling us for several years, you must speak with Shadi. If you want to understand context, you want to understand the Middle East, which is a collection of minorities. Even though it's a Sunni majority region, it is comprised of tens of millions, even more than 100 million minorities across the Middle East. And here we are in Israel, as we said, as a microcosm. Shadi Khalloul, it's really an honor to have you on the program, on the briefing, to help us understand from where you sit, where you stand, from where you're a warrior also for Israel, for freedom, and for really a multicultural, not only country, but region. How are you seeing the reality post October the 7th. I'm sure you'll tell us that we should not have been surprised by what we saw, because you've been speaking about this for many years, this very dark reality that the world and the region has been reintroduced after October 7th.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Morris, for hosting me and at your Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. And I have an honor actually being in this unique program. And I think that it is opportunity for your audience to hear from an Aramaic Christian Maronite Israeli citizen, loyal citizen to the state, being a major in the IDF, a project manager for recruiting Christians to the IDF with a pre-military program for Jewish and Christians in Galilee. I see the situation here no other than continuous atrocities against non-Muslim minorities in Middle East, include Israel, include Lebanon, include Syria, include Iraq. The non-Muslim communities here are suffering from those radical jihadists, radical Islamic jihadists, or political Islam, as we call it, that they try to use Islam to radicalize the population in the Middle East and turn them against actually other minorities here in order to submit their past or replicate their past history and establish what they call the Islamic State or the Islamic Caliphate in the Middle East and in North Africa and continuing to Europe and USA. That's the agenda. But here in Israel, thankfully, we are here living in different situation with the majority of Jews who are allowing this democracy to prosper. Without the Jewish majority, we will not have a democracy in this country, because the other side is built on non-democratic values. They have, we can actually prove that by just watching other Arab countries around us, and we can see that there's no democracy. So there's no reason, if Israel, God forbid, or Jews will not be a majority here in Israel, we will see a democracy prospering in this country. The opposite, we will have another dictatorship regime, we will have another autocratic regimes being established instead of this democracy. So we need, as all together, Druze, Christians, Jews, Arabs, even Arabs that live here better than all other Arab than in other Arab countries. The Arab minority in Israel live much better in by all means. They need to defend this Jewish democracy and this Jewish state in order to keep it strong and safe and secure for all of us in this country. And what Iran has built here around us, we call it a ring of fire, a unification of fronts, and it starts from Lebanon all the way to their Shia axis through Syria, Iraq, Iran, and then Houthis in Yemen, and then the Gaza, Hamas, and Islamic Jihad, which is Islamic Brotherhood movements that are no different in their agenda and ideologies, in their radical Islamic ideologies to annihilate non-Muslims in their eyes. And we have also another front, which is interior front, that they try to incite the Arab, which is Muslim population inside Israel, against the Jews and against the state, beside Judea and Samaria front. This is the general, or what we see in general here happening now, and it starts by Hamas, October 7 atrocities and genocidal actions against Jewish population in South Israel, and Hezbollah here in the north is actually also has the same agenda, the same plans. They declared it before, they declaring it now, And before October 7, actually, the ambassador of Hezbollah to Iran in an interview said it loudly, clearly, if the Jews will not be convinced peacefully to leave Israel, we will do it by force. So the thing here is about Jewish existence and Israeli existence, and we and the Jews as Israeli Christian Aramaic people who are indigenous native to the land, together like the Jews, by the way. The Jews were part of this land, and we testify by our Aramaic language to their own language that they used to speak it back then 2,000 years ago, before Islamic conquest in the 7th century that imposed the Arabic language on us and the Jews alike.
Shadi, why does it appear that this type of analysis that you've given us with great historic context and wisdom, you don't hear from other, let's call very educated, aware Israelis that are not Jewish?
Okay, well, let's start maybe analyze what is Israeli society. Israeli society contains 80% Jews, or let's say 76% Jews, 20% Arabs, and 4% of Christian minority and Druze minority. The Christians are 2% and Druze are 2%, which are non-Arabs in their identification, as the Christians are natives who speak Aramaic. Now, the Arab who contain, who are the Muslims in general, they hardly, most of them, feel like attached also to the conflict, in this conflict, to their Arab brothers and sisters in the other side. And by so, they are pushing Christians who live as a minority among their own, in the same villages, to stand in solidarity with them. And the Christians who are weak are not speaking loudly because they fear from the actions of the Muslim Arab side if they show solidarity with Jews and with the Israeli state, and that include very clear examples of myself. I had, for example, a grenade being thrown on my home only for encouraging Christians to serve in the IDF and be an integral part of the Israeli society and the Israeli state. So, and Muslims who are moderate and want also the same process are being attacked by a minority, let's say, but very strong minority of Arab radical movements, which is Islamic Brotherhood movement and political Arab movements supporters who threaten those moderate ones who want to be part of Israel. And unfortunately, they use the conflict and the feeling of Arabs. They play on feelings, not on minds, on logic, only on feelings. Oh, how dare you can go and be part of Israel and defend Israel? How dare, when Israel is fighting your brothers in the other side? So this is the game they playing it, and those Arabs who are threatened from showing any type of solidarity and integration, actually not allowed to speak out loudly and not supported enough even by the state to speak loudly. And because the state is democratic and allow everyone to speak his own mind, so this Arab radical movements take advantage of the democracy in order to silence the other side, and they do it in aggressive way. You don't hear them in a very stronger way in daily life.
Shadi, do you think that the wait a second, or can because we don't see Shadi, can you hear us? Okay.
Yes.
We have traveled throughout the region from the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, meeting with also people from government and private people in countries that do not have relations with Israel. And we have our conversations in Arabic. I'm talking about many Muslim majority countries and Arab countries. And we were pleasantly surprised to hear them discuss with us that they see the Jews as a natural, historic member of this Arab Muslim majority Middle East. Are you surprised by that, to hear that it seems to be much more acceptance of Israel when we speak in Arabic, reach out in Arabic to try to, let's say, position ourselves as we truly are, which is a 3,500-year-old member of this ancient region, and we are receiving positive indications from many of our neighbors?
Yes, I can divide the Arab world to two actually sides. One is the Gulf countries, the Gulf Arab countries, and which are moderate countries who actually established and got a huge amount of Western advisors in their countries who westernized their system and their economy, and they want to be of this big world and this globalization, and they have a prosperity and thriving societies and communities. And with other countries like Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon, who were controlled fully by the Islamic Revolution regime of Iran, which trying to export the Islamic values and radical values to those countries among Shia communities. And this radicalized the other side also of the Sunni world, who are actually their opponents, who think that only by radicalizing themselves can stand against the radicalization of the Shia axis, because the moderate ones cannot stand against them. And that's what we saw ISIS. We saw the radical side of Sunni world with ISIS, and with that prospered actually for a while in Syria and Iraq, and then got actually damaged or weakened. And we saw also the Iranian ones still succeeding. And we don't hear, for example, these wars in Iraq. We don't hear it in Syria. We don't hear it in Lebanon. And I know maybe there are so many people thinking the same like the other Arab countries you visited, but they cannot speak out because they are threatened. So this is another testimony of how the Jews are part of this region, and the Arabs know that the Jews are part of this region. And oppositely, many actually Western people don't understand this fact and think that the Jews are colonizers of the land, which are not actually. And they are playing the game of this radical Islamic Iranian regime, who trying to accuse the Jews of being foreigners to their forefathers' land here. So I am not surprised to hear that, but I am also not surprised by the weakness of this axis, unfortunately. And we can see it today in the war in Gaza, because anyone who would say anything wrong about Gaza and Hamas specifically, he will be accused as the betrayer for the cause.
Understood. That is, you actually teed me up for the next question. It's a perfect a perfect pathway to the next question, and that is that Secretary of State of the United States, Anthony Blinken, came here for the 5th time since October the 7th, pushing Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli government to lower the flames of the fighting in Gaza, to let more and more trucks of humanitarian aid into Gaza, to come to perhaps another Qatari brokered deal on the hostages. And there are two sets of voices within Israel. One is the prime minister and himself, whom we met with, by the way, 3-4 days ago at length in his offices. And he said, you know, Israel will be continuing until victory against Hamas. And the other set of voices are, no, Israel has to compromise. Israel has to have the return of hostages, even at a very high price. And I want to ask you, as a Middle Easterner, whether the Middle East seems to be, or the Middle East Arab countries seem to be waiting on the sidelines to see if Israel will win overwhelmingly, destroy the Hamas, as opposed to whether it will show weakness in the image of the Middle Eastern countries and not destroy the Hamas. What is your view on it?
Okay, well, my view as Middle Easterner in this region that know the mentality of these people here, and seeing how let's go and see this conflict as two families, two Muslim families in Nazareth or in this region, how they solve problems that occur among each others or atrocities from one side toward the other. You know how? Only when one side is stronger, and for sure, definitely, for 100%, he is stronger, the other side is weaker, and he has no actually hope to destroy the other side, then he gave up and submit to the other side actually rules or requests. If we play the Western rules here as American administration trying to impose on us, we will lose this war. We will lose this war because in either way, in the West, they are accusing us, as we saw in Hague, as we are the ones who were attacked, but now we are the ones who being accused of aggressors.
Yeah.
Of being aggressor. So there's no meaning for playing this Western rules now. The only thing that you can play with in the Middle East is to actually, by power, forcing Hamas by all means of actions on giving up their hope to win this war, which include continue the fight against them, destroy their regime, destroy their control in Gaza, and even not allowing them to have food and water, so their fighters cannot fight anymore. And then they will come to you and say, okay, let's have a peace agreement or a peace deal or hostages deal, because peace with these people never happened. Let me remind you about Hudaybiyah Hudna, what they call it, or deal, that Muhammad the Prophet, for them, he actually submitted a deal with the Medina people, and it was 10 years deal. And after 2 years only, after building his power, he breached the agreement and attacked them in one day and annihilated them and controlled the whole Arab Peninsula. This is just example of Hamas, who is claiming they are the right Islam, who following the same rules. No deals are respected by them, and that's what they would do actually, and did before in all our agreements with them. So the only way to win this war is, I am with Benjamin Netanyahu way. If you are saying that that's what he told you, I think that's the right way to go. But you need also sometimes with your allies, and it's a great allies actually that we have with the United States, and we sometimes depend on them on some issues. We need also to adjust our policy, unfortunately, and that's actually type of weakness in this specific case.
Yeah, very much.
So I think, Dan, two of the things that Shadi touched on that are worthwhile, I think, getting a little bit more into. This idea of allowing fundamentalist Islam to take over the discussion. And if you don't push back, then it's going to be something which really floods the entire area and with detrimental consequences. We've seen it not a small amount as a result of the October 7 massacre, with this outpouring of anti-Semitism, of Jew hatred onto every street in the world. This is maybe the product of, and we saw it in the hearing in Congress. Is it okay to call for a genocide of Jews in the right context, of course? And is that something which it can be tolerated? On the other hand, I think what Shadi really does stress and says so eloquently and so beautifully is that in this area in the Middle East, where minorities suffer tremendously at the hands of Islam, whether it be Shia or Sunni, there is this like little island of and beacon of hope where all of these different communities, all of these different minorities can flourish. Where I think it's worthwhile just stressing, Shadi is a major in the Israeli Defense Force, in the Israeli army. That's something which I think that most of the world doesn't even understand, that there are non-Jews, that there are Christians in the IDF, and they identify as Israelis and as proud as Israelis who are willing to go and fight and die for Israel. And I think that's two of the points that Shadi makes so clearly, that's worthwhile taking away.
Yeah,
Morris, I'm sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Please go ahead, Shadi.
I wanted to stress out something, that I see similarities between what's happening for us in Israel as Israelis, as Israeli state and Israeli citizens, and what happened for the Christian Maronites and those Aramaic Christian people in Lebanon. Because the Maronites are descendants of the Syriac Aramaic population who inhabited this land at the time of Muslim conquest. They withdrew to the upper valleys, which they were inaccessible, and in these high valleys they could preserve their national and religious peculiarity. They formed autonomous region in mountains of Lebanon, and when through history they suffered from persecution, from oppression, from genocide, from butchering, from slaughter, from different atrocities by the Mamluks, by the Arabs, by the Ottomans, and in 1917, Sykes-Picot Agreement, 1918, the Middle East was divided by France and Britain, and those Maronite Christians, after a huge genocide and famine that the Ottomans commit against them, they were given a country was called Lebanon, and they mistakenly enlarged the borders of what was called the small Lebanon to greater Lebanon, without being strong enough to control the other Muslim communities inside Lebanon, who always felt loyal to the Arab world and to the Sunni world or Shia world, and never felt as a Lebanese people. And then they lost their country with a civil war that happened in 1975 to 1990, and Arab, together with Palestinian Arafat terrorists back then, commit huge atrocities against them, raping women, killing children, killing fathers, elderly people, same like happened in south of Israel by that Hamas did against our Israeli population. And when the Lebanese Aramaic Christians, those Maronites with the Phalange party, retaliated against those Palestinian atrocities and Arab world that sided with them, what happened? The world accused those local Lebanese natives of the land, in their homeland, that they are the ones who are committed a genocide and a massacre against the Palestinians and those radical Islamic groups. That reminds me of what's happening today in Israel. Hamas did everything, like all possible atrocities and genocidal action against our people as in Israel. And after all, the world come and accuse us when we retaliate back to take back our history, to release our hostages, to bring them home. and to build and protect our communities again. We are the wrong doing people, while those terrorists are now the I call it the peacemakers, the peacemakers who trying to that one piece. That's absurd. The word is actually. One day I was in the Knesset in the Parliament of Israel, and I was discussing about the Christian Aramaic issues and how we can build a Christian Aramaic town in the Galilee. And one of the Knesset member told me back then, Shadi, in this world, unfortunately, we have no justice. There is no justice. There is only interest. And those people who are actually demonstrating against Jews and Israel in very anti-Semitic way in New York and in USA and in Europe and the whole entire world are actually all funded by Iranian regime and by Iranian money and by very extremist people who are actually hating Jews and the Jewish existence in their forefathers' land, the land of Israel. That's the truth, and that should be said. And we together, only by unity of people who, like you and us, who know the truth, and this unity will actually guarantee a strong Israel and secure Israel and safe Israel for all of us as loyal citizens in this state. And whoever wants to play this game and be loyal to the state is welcome and is more than welcome, actually. And whoever doesn't want, he must find actually himself being neglected in this state and won't find himself as part of this Israeli system that we hope in the future to make it stronger and for a better future of Israel.
Shadi, thank you for that assessment. How about this? Help us understand, had Israel not been a Jewish and democratic state, but had been another one of maybe the 23rd Arab Muslim state, and 240 hostages had been taken after 1,300 civilians murdered, raped, and tortured, beheaded, children burned. How, in your view, would an Arab Muslim country have responded had Hamas or Daesh or Qaeda had done that to another country? Do you understand the simulation I'm trying to ask you?
I will answer you very closely. It's a very good question, by the way, and have a very good answer for you. From the last 10 years of civil war in Syria, which is not similar case, but let me tell you and remind the people what Assad did for the Palestinian Sunnis in Yarmouk refugee camp in Damascus. Mm-hmm. He annihilated all of them because they revolted against him and tried to demonstrate against the regime together with the Sunni Muslims of Syria. He butchered them, and he thrown actually also a chemical weapon on them. He annihilated them, and no one actually dared to say anything. And this word is hypocrite word. We don't see Hague came on and did any or South Africa filing a court or anything against Assad regime in Hague, while Israel, who is trying to avoid killing of citizens, and they go only after terrorists who hiding behind the citizens, are the ones who being accused of genocidal actions, while the others go along. What we need to do, actually, we cannot do, because unfortunately this world look at us as Jews, let's say, and as Israelis in a different way, in a different binocular, I think, that looks at you as a person that has values, that is Western society, that respecting human rights, while the others, they don't care, and they can run away from any actually courts by just killing other people, and nobody talk to them. I can tell you, many stories. I can tell you that we need to do that. I kill, like annihilate them and kill them, but we not, because we're not gonna do it. This is not our values, and I am happy with our values. Honestly, I am happy. At the end, we will win. We will prevail. Our values, who are humanitarian values, will prevail because we are defending ourselves and we have nowhere to go. They will lose, but it will take time. And my answer for you is clear. If we were an Arab country, the other side who attacked us and did these atrocities against us will not exist anymore.
Mhm. That's clearly the answer, Dan. The leadership of the countries around us know exactly how to deal with any type of aggression of that nature. We saw it in Jordan in 1970 with the uprising of the PLO there, and what was called Black September, when the Hashemite kingdom basically murdered thousands of who were trying to overthrow the Hashemite kingdom. We saw what happened in Syria. We saw what happened in Lebanon as part of the civil war. We've seen what's happened in Egypt, when Egypt wanted to effectively deal with the tunnels and the smuggling tunnels from Egypt into the Gaza Strip. They knocked down 5 kilometers of houses, and they filled the tunnels with raw sewage. We know how our neighbors deal with any type of insurrection, let alone acts of war, taking hostages, butchering women, children, babies. We are the exception to the rule in the area.
And what about Saddam Hussein? What he did with his own people? What he did against the demonstrations against him? He also throw a chemical weapon on the people and massacring people by chemical weapons. We are not doing those things. We are trying even to notify people before attacking the house, because we want to make sure the house is empty. And that's actually, maybe it's a weakness, because terrorists know that we're gonna demolish this house, that they try to attack our forces from it, and hide also some type of weapons in this house, using the people as human shields. But we still, because we have values, we try to make as much as possible people not being affected and save people's life. But we cannot do a lot with terror organizations that taking the people and put them in front of their forces, using them as human shields, and somehow the people will be actually hurt and harmed. We saw how IDF went to homes, to children, to babies' rooms, finding missiles in those babies' rooms. We saw how anti-tank missiles were hidden in those babies' rooms inside their homes in Gaza. So what do you expect from this evil and from this enemy? That they would protect their citizens? They said, let the UN take care of them. We built for us our bomb shelters under the ground with the tunnels. That's what Hamas said. And we are protected. Let the UN take care of the civilians. So if you cannot take care of the civilians, this regime definitely should not be allowed to rule Gaza. And we need to actually eliminate this regime and this Hamas regime and the terrorists, and give Gaza to be ruled by another regime and another system.
Shadi, we at the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, together with our partners in the Israel Defense and Security Forum, which are called the Bitronistim, wrote a plan that we presented to the Prime Minister as well as to other cabinet ministers, called the Day After in Gaza, which reflected our assessment that the Palestinian Authority, Ashraf, the PLO, is no better than the Hamas, because they fund terror, they incite to terror, they incentivize to terror in their official budgets. And our view, this is a long wind-up to a question, but our view is that there are local Gazans who are very capable of managing Gaza, administering Gaza, and Israel is more than happy to help them from a security standpoint, to make sure that Hamas and Daesh and Hezbollah and the there are many radical organizations there. Don't terrorize the public, and at the same time, Israel can defend itself. What is your view about this new local, let's call it the localization of non-terror affiliated people in Gaza, managing their own affairs with the help of Israel and perhaps Egypt and the help of Gulf countries?
Yeah, I think I agree. It's a good plan because I also look at Gaza people not as one unit. They are actually being held as hostages by Hamas and educated by Hamas and dependent on Hamas. But if you separate Gaza to different cities like Khan Yunis, Rafah, Gaza City, and other villages around Gaza or the suburbs, you can divide them to be ruled or run in different mayor by different mayors with help of you, and you are also existing and around them, helping them to be managed in a proper way and have a proper education system that is not inciting against Jews. It will take one generation maybe to have a new generation of young people who lived in a good way and a good manner and living in peaceful life without actually being controlled by a radical Islamic group. And this way, in the future, we might reach a good deal of peace with these people who were educated properly according to good teachings, like in other Arab countries that you mentioned. They love to see you having peace with them. So that's I think a good plan, and it's a good job for you and the Bitcoinism that you presented that. I hope somebody will adopt it.
Well, we'll be happy when you come and visit us on Tuesday. We'll be happy to share it with you and get your insights and your input. We're really very honored that you shared your wisdom with us, your observations, and I think our view at the JCPA is that only by having the broader input, wisdom, experience, representations of the whole rainbow, the whole fabric of the Israeli society, and you know, absolutely from the Aramean community, which I think this is probably the first time in many ever that we've heard from a leader from your community, and it does us a great honor as Israel to have your input and your friendship, and we will really look forward to seeing you on Tuesday when you visit us here in Jerusalem.
I will be more than glad to review it and look at it and give my actually notes to the plan. And I can tell you that it's not only good for Gaza, this plan in a greater view of this region. I think we should do the same in Lebanon. Lebanon is controlled by Hezbollah. Hezbollah, a radical Shia Islamic group, also controlling Lebanon, is imposing a very radical education on Shia Muslims in South Lebanon. And we need also to change this system of Lebanon to have a confederation of the state where different ethnicities and minorities and nationalities and religious groups can have their own, in their own geographical areas, their own teaching system and education system, and they can manage themselves with the help of the Western world. And if they need our help, we will do so as well, and change Syria and Lebanon from the base in the basic by system, changing the system. Otherwise, we will not succeed. If we succeed in Gaza, we will not succeed in Lebanon, and we will have this problem, which is existential problem. It's not like in Gaza. Hezbollah is stronger than Hamas 10 times. And if he can keep controlling Lebanon, he will make Lebanon not only, if they are now an army of terrorists, in the future, this state will be a state of terror in a complete way in all its systems. So if we cannot eliminate this threat now, we will face it in the future by a huge monster that will come after us and annihilate us here in Israel. We shall not accept that to happen, and we need to change after the war with Lebanon the system in similar way like happened in Gaza, in a confederation system, and we will have a peace then with Lebanon.
That is exactly the point, Dan. The longer we wait dealing with Lebanon, the stronger Hezbollah gets, the greater the stranglehold of Iran over Lebanon. and eventually it will just become another Iran, another theocracy, and a violent one, and that has to be dealt with sooner rather than later. Just as a final point, because unfortunately our time has run out, just to give our audience understanding that we're not just talking about theory of the hypocrisy of South Africa, Syria, Jordan, Iran even are members of the Convention for the Prevention of Genocide, and yet South Africa only decided to target Israel from defending itself.
Wait, before you go forward here,
rather than those other countries.
I want to clarify something right here, because you mentioned South Africa. South Africa today, it has been suggested, is becoming very quickly a terror proxy of the Iranian regime. And I think we should go on, I want to go on record as saying, not that they are carrying out terror attacks, but what they have done here, Shadi, the Republic of South Africa, the ANC, has acted in service of the genocidal Iranian regime and its genocidal proxy Hamas, that have stated as a matter of public policy their intention to mass murder the nation state of the Jewish people and all of our and everyone inside Israel, as well as the Jewish people itself. And the fact that South Africa has so shamefully and dragged Israel by the instruction of its Iranian partners and its Hamas affiliates into the Hague is only a mega pigua, a mega terror attack, again by the Iranian regime. And South Africa should be called to account for this absolutely intolerable behavior. I want to make that clear, because Maurice was a little bit not sympathetic, but in the way that we were playing this out, putting Israel on the defense. And I think that in this particular case, South Africa has gone over the line, and they should be called to account, because they are an accomplice and a supporter of the Iranian regime.
And that is exactly it,
Yeah.
Dan. You can only just imagine South Africa, as you know, just signed in August last year, signed a strategic economic agreement
And political
with Iran.
Correct.
That is that joining of forces. And now South Africa is really paying the price of being just another one of those tentacles of Iran. That is, I think,
That's right.
Clearly the connection that has to be made. We support you financially. You do our bidding around the world to attack Israel and support the terrorists.
Absolutely.
That's the context.
I couldn't agree with you more. Very well said, Maurice, as always, eloquent and to the point. I want to point out to our viewers that many of our viewers have written in, Shadi, and said, bravo, bravo. Harold sent a bravo, bravo a minute ago. Our dear friend and brother Harold Rode, and as well as a number of other viewers have sent in, how can we get in touch with Shadi? How can we find out more, Shadi? And allow me to say that the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs would be very honored to have Shadi as a fellow at the Jerusalem Center. You can get in touch with him by getting in touch with us. And our positioning is exactly as you've heard these last 45 minutes, is to bring the wisdom of all the communities in the Middle East to the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. We see ourselves as a bridge and an anchor of security, of freedom, of prosperity, and communication, interconnectedness in what we call this Middle East. And we see ourselves as that bridge between the West and the let's call it the Arab, Christian, Muslim, Jewish East here in Israel as a microcosm of the whole region. So that's the positioning of JCPA. And what you've heard here from Shadi has been the type of wisdom that we hope for ourselves will continue here from Jerusalem, from the holy city, to the three great civilizations. So Shadi, we look forward to seeing you in just 2 days. Thank you for joining us. We're going to turn this into a written brief as well under your name. And we'll look forward to having you many, many more times here with the Jerusalem Center.
I am an honorable to have both of you with me today. Actually, we are together in the same boat, and so thank you for hosting me. And from here, from the Galilee, from the Israeli-Lebanese border, I wish you peace in Jerusalem, and peace for Jerusalem and Israel and for all of us.
Amen, amen. Inshallah.
Amen.
As we close, our audience should know that Israel's south is being targeted again by rockets from Gaza, Ashdod, entire areas. Hundreds of thousands of people are now running to their bomb shelters because of the attacks of the terrorists going on. And unfortunately, we have to leave on that note. We will be back with you again tomorrow at 4 o'clock Israel time. Thank you again for joining us.